The duct tape caught the fluorescent light first. Vivienne Khoury had been teaching English at Roosevelt High for 16 years, long enough to recognize when a student was performing rather than living. But it wasn't Iris Brennan's perfect posture or her precisely annotated copy of The Grapes of Wrath that triggered Vivienne's instinct that November morning. It was the shoes, navy canvas sneakers, once probably new, now held together with strips of silver duct tape wrapped around the soles where rubber had separated from fabric, the kind of repair job that spoke of necessity, not style. Iris had her feet tucked under her desk, ankles crossed in a way that seemed designed to make them disappear. "Iris, would you read your response to question 4? Vivienne asked, watching the girl's shoulders tighten almost imperceptibly. Iris uncrossed her ankles, stood with careful grace, and read in a clear voice that never wavered. Steinbeck suggests that resilience isn't the absence of breaking, but the decision to rebuild with whatever materials remain. The Jodes lose everything except their capacity to begin again. That's not optimism, that's survival mathematics. 23 students sat in that classroom. Only Vivienne noticed Iris sit down and immediately retuck her feet, hiding the shoes again. The alarm on Iris's phone vibrated at 4:30 that morning, the way it did every morning. She woke in the back seat of a 2008 Honda Accord with a cracked rear windshield, covered in plastic sheeting and duct tape. Her mother slept in the front seat, reclined as far as the steering wheel allowed, still wearing her gas station uniform from the overnight shift she'd just finished. Iris moved carefully, extracting herself from the sleeping bag without waking Paulette. The laundromat's parking lot was empty except for their car and a delivery truck making its early rounds. She grabbed her backpack, checked that her school clothes were still neatly folded inside, and walked 3 blocks to the Shell station where the bathroom key hung on a wooden paddle behind the counter. The attendant, a tired man named Marcus who worked the early shift, nodded at her. He'd stopped asking questions 2 months ago. In the bathroom that smelled of industrial cleaner and something sour underneath, Iris washed her face, brushed her teeth, changed into her school clothes. Today's outfit was the gray cardigan, white shirt, and jeans, the second of her 3 combinations, and used the hand dryer to smooth her hair before pulling it into a ponytail. She checked her reflection. Presentable, invisible, perfect. The walk to Roosevelt High took 47 minutes. She'd timed it. Back in the classroom, Vivienne collected the essays, pausing at Iris's desk. The girl had written 4 pages when the assignment called for 2. Her handwriting small and precise, maximizing every inch of paper. At the top of the page, barely visible, was a small coffee stain, as if the paper had been written somewhere without a proper desk. Vivienne thought of Theodore, who would have noticed these details immediately. Her husband had possessed an almost supernatural ability to see the invisible students, the ones who suffered quietly while maintaining perfect grades. He'd been dead for 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, and she still caught herself turning to tell him things. "She's hiding something," she would have said. "Then pay attention," he would have answered. "The details always tell the story." The library closed at 6, but Mrs. Rodriguez, the librarian, had stopped enforcing that rule for Iris months ago. The girl sat at the same corner table every afternoon, laptop plugged into the outlet underneath, phone charging beside it, working through homework with the kind of focused intensity that suggested she had nowhere else to be. Today, she'd brought her calculus textbook, her chemistry notes, and a worn copy of Jane Eyre for her independent reading project. She worked methodically, occasionally glancing at her charging phone. When Mrs. Rodriguez announced the final 15-minute warning, Iris began packing her bag with the same careful precision she applied to everything. Vivienne hadn't meant to stay late, but parent-teacher conferences had run long, and she was still grading papers in her classroom when she saw Iris through the window, walking across the parking lot toward the side exit. Something about the girl's posture, shoulders hunched against the cold, backpack heavy, made Vivienne set down her pen. She'd been noticing things, small things. Theodore's voice in her head. The details always tell the story. Iris wore the same 3 outfits in rotation. Gray cardigan combination, blue sweater combination, black hoodie combination. Always clean, always pressed somehow, but always the same. The shoes never changed. Those navy sneakers with the silver duct tape worn every single day, regardless of weather. During lunch, Iris ate quickly, then carefully wrapped her remaining food, a sandwich half, an apple, crackers, in napkins and tucked them into her backpack. Not casually, the way students might save snacks. Deliberately, the way someone might preserve resources. She never talked about home. Never mentioned family plans, weekend activities, or where she lived. When other students complained about their parents, or their rooms, or their siblings, Iris stayed silent, her expression neutral, making herself invisible. And there was the exhaustion, subtle but present in the shadows under her eyes, the way she sometimes startled awake during silent reading time, the careful application of concealer that almost hid how tired she was. Vivienne pulled out her planning notebook, the one where she kept notes about students who concerned her. She started a new page, dated it, and began documenting what she'd observed. The shoes, the 3 outfits, the hoarded food, the exhaustion, the coffee stain on pristine homework, the way Iris stayed at school as long as possible. Theodore's journals sat in a box in her closet at home, filled with his plans for a nonprofit that would help families like the ones he'd worked with as a social worker. She hadn't been able to look at them since he died. The grief too sharp, his dreams too painful to touch. But tonight, watching Iris disappear into the November darkness, Vivienne felt something shift. Theodore had taught her to see. Now she needed to decide what to do with what she saw. The next afternoon, Vivienne positioned herself near the cafeteria during lunch. She watched Iris move through the line, taking the free lunch she qualified for, eating half, then carefully, when she thought no one was watching, wrapping the rest and sliding it into her backpack. Their eyes met for just a moment. Iris's expression flickered, fear, shame, defiance, before settling back into careful neutrality. Vivienne made her decision. She was going to find out what was really going on. Vivienne started keeping a second notebook. This one she didn't leave on her desk where other teachers might see it. She kept it in her messenger bag, took it home each night, filled it with observations that felt increasingly invasive even as they felt necessary. November 14th. Iris arrived at 6:47 a.m., sat in library until doors opened, wearing the gray sweater again, third time this week. November 15th. Asked class about weekend plans. Everyone responded except Iris. She looked down at her textbook, made herself small. November 16th. Noticed Iris has a cough. No tissues in her backpack. Used rough school paper towels instead. She wrote in precise, clinical language, trying to create distance from what she was documenting. But her hands shook sometimes when she closed the notebook. Theodore would have known what to do. He'd spent 15 years as a social worker, seeing exactly what she was seeing now, the invisible families, the students who slipped through every safety net because they didn't look homeless enough, didn't act desperate enough, didn't fit the narrative people expected. "You're obsessing." Marcus Chen, the physics teacher, leaned against her classroom doorframe during their shared planning period. He'd noticed her watching Iris during lunch again. "I'm concerned." "About Brennan?" "She's your top student." Marcus sipped his coffee. "Straight A's never causes problems. Some kids just don't care about fashion, Viv. Not everyone needs the latest Nikes." Vivienne felt something hot and sharp in her chest. "It's not about fashion." "Then what? She's quiet?" "Lots of kids are quiet." He shrugged, genuinely puzzled. "You can't save everyone. Sometimes a kid just has their own style." After he left, Vivienne sat at her desk and cried quietly for 5 minutes. Then she dried her face, reapplied her lipstick, and went back to teaching. But Marcus's dismissal had crystallized something. No one else was seeing what she was seeing, which meant no one else was going to help. The rain started Tuesday afternoon, November 19th. Heavy, cold, the kind of November rain that soaked through clothes and chilled bone deep. Vivienne watched Iris pack her backpack with the same careful precision she applied to everything. Textbook, notebooks, the granola bar she'd saved from lunch, wrapped in a napkin. "Do you need a ride?" Vivienne asked, keeping her voice casual. "It's really coming down." "I'm fine, thank you, Miss Khoury." Iris's expression was perfectly neutral. "I don't live far." It was the first time Vivienne had heard her lie. She waited 10 minutes after Iris left. Then she grabbed her keys, her heart hammering, and followed. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. This was wrong. This violated every boundary between teacher and student. If anyone found out, she could be fired. But she thought of Theodore's journals, still in that box in her closet. All those families he'd documented who fell through the cracks because no one wanted to see them. All those plans he'd made that she'd been too grief-stricken to pursue. She kept 3 car lengths back, feeling like a criminal. Iris walked quickly despite the rain, head down, backpack hunched over her shoulders for minimal protection. She didn't have an umbrella. Her shoes, those navy sneakers with the silver duct tape, were already soaked through. Vivienne could see the water darkening the fabric from a block away. They moved through neighborhoods that got progressively rougher. Chain-link fences, boarded windows. A corner store with bars on the windows and men standing outside despite the rain. Iris walked past them without looking up, practiced at being invisible. 20 minutes. 30. 45. 3 miles on foot in the pouring rain. Iris stopped at the public library, a squat brick building with fluorescent lights visible through the windows. She went inside. Vivienne parked across the street, waiting. 15 minutes later, Iris emerged, her hair damp, but no longer dripping. She'd used the bathroom to dry off as much as possible. The laundromat was another 10-minute walk. A 24-hour place with flickering neon and a parking lot half full of cars in various states of disrepair. Iris walked past the front entrance, past the humming dryers, visible through the steamed windows, to the back of the lot, to a beat-up Honda sedan, silver paint oxidized to chalky gray, back bumper held on with wire. Pennsylvania plates expired 6 months ago. Vivienne's breath caught. Iris stopped beside the car, looked around carefully, systematically, checking every angle, making sure no one was watching. Her movements were practiced, routine. How many times had she done this? How many months had she been living like this? Then Iris opened the back door and climbed inside. Vivienne sat in her car, rain drumming on the roof, and watched the Honda's windows fog from the inside. She could see Iris's silhouette moving in the back seat, settling in, pulling something, a blanket maybe, around herself. The tears came suddenly, violently. Vivienne gripped the steering wheel and sobbed, thinking of Iris walking 3 miles in the rain to climb into a cold car, thinking of her perfect homework and her careful dignity and her straight A's achieved while living in a parking lot, thinking of how many mornings Iris had woken in that back seat at 4:30 a.m. to begin the elaborate performance of normalcy. When she could breathe again, Vivienne pulled out her phone, called her friend Denise, who'd worked with Theodore at Family Services, explained what she'd discovered, her voice shaking. "Don't approach her yet," Denise said carefully. "You'll spook her and she'll run. These families, they're terrified of CPS, of being separated. You need to build trust first." That night, Vivienne finally opened the box in her closet. Theodore's journals, his careful handwriting documenting case after case of invisible homelessness. Families living in cars, in motels, doubled up in condemned buildings. His frustration bled through every page. The system only sees homelessness when it looks like the stereotype, he'd written. But the family living in their car, the kid who's still going to school, still maintaining grades, they're invisible, and invisible people don't get help. He'd sketched out plans for a different kind of nonprofit, one that identified families before they hit rock bottom, that provided not just housing, but comprehensive support, job training, mental health services, educational assistance. That understood poverty as a systemic failure, not a personal one. Vivienne read until 2 a.m., tears streaming down her face. Then she got in her car and drove back to the laundromat. The Honda was still there, windows fogged, silent in the rain-soaked parking lot. Vivienne sat in her car for a long time, gathering courage. Then she got out, walked through the rain, and gently tapped on the window. Iris's face appeared in the glass, eyes wide with terror and shame, every carefully constructed wall crumbling in an instant. The rain had soaked through Vivienne's jacket by the time she reached the Honda. Her hand trembled as she tapped on the fogged window. 3 soft knocks that shattered everything. Iris's face appeared in the glass, like a ghost materializing. Terror first, then recognition, then something worse than either. Pure, undiluted shame. The kind that makes you want to disappear into atoms. The door opened. Iris climbed out, her body rigid, those duct-taped shoes hitting the wet pavement. She was shaking, but her voice came out hard. "Why did you follow me? Iris, why?" Louder now, defensive walls slamming up. "Everything's fine, I'm fine. You had no right. You're one of the smartest students I've ever taught." Vivienne kept her voice gentle but firm. "And you're living in a car. Neither of those things is fine." Iris's jaw clenched. "So what? You gonna report me? Get me taken away from my mom? Put me in some foster home?" Her eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. "We're managing. We don't need... I'm not here to report you." Vivienne stepped closer, rain streaming down both their faces. "I'm here because I understand." "You don't understand anything." Iris's voice cracked. "You have a house, a job, a life. You don't know what it's like to... 2 years ago, my husband died of cancer." The words came out raw. The medical bills were catastrophic. Our insurance covered maybe 60%. I had a mortgage, his hospital debts, funeral costs. I was 3 months behind on payments. The bank sent foreclosure notices. Iris went still. I spent 6 months living on credit cards, eating ramen, turning off the heat to save money. I'd grade papers at school until they kicked me out because I couldn't afford the electric bill at home. Vivienne's voice shook. "I taught your class in the same 3 outfits for an entire semester because I couldn't buy new clothes. And I was terrified every single day that someone would notice, would know, would see that I was failing." "But you didn't lose your house." "No, I got lucky. Theodore had a small life insurance policy I didn't know about. It came through just in time." Vivienne wiped rain from her face. "But I learned what shame feels like, what pride costs, how hard it is to ask for help when you've spent your whole life being the person who helps others." Headlights swept across the parking lot. A battered pickup truck pulled in, and Iris's entire body went rigid. "That's my mom." Paulette Brennan climbed out of the truck, still wearing her gas station uniform, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She took one look at Vivienne, standing there with her daughter, and her expression shifted to something fierce and protective. "Who the hell are you?" "Mom, it's my teacher." "Your teacher followed you home?" Paulette moved between them, shoulders squared. "You got no right. We're not doing anything wrong. My daughter goes to school every day. She's fed. She's safe. Mrs. Brennan, I'm not here to judge you." "Then why are you here?" Paulette's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "To feel sorry for us? To tell someone? To make yourself feel better by helping the poor homeless family?" "I'm here because your daughter is extraordinary, and she's suffering, and I think I can help. We don't need charity. I'm not offering charity." Vivienne held her ground. "I'm offering strategy." The 3 of them stood in the rain, the laundromat's fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the parking lot. Finally, Paulette's shoulders sagged. "You want to know how we ended up here?" Her voice was bitter. "I was a dental hygienist. Good job, benefits, regular hours. Then I needed emergency surgery. Appendix rupture. Insurance covered most of it, but not all. I was out of work for 6 weeks, lost my job, couldn't make rent, landlord wouldn't work with us. By the time I found new work, We'd been evicted. And once you're evicted, nobody will rent to you. Need first month, last month security deposit, that's $4,000 we don't have. I work 2 jobs now, Paulette continued. Overnight at the gas station, weekends, cleaning houses, zingies. Still can't save enough for a deposit because every dollar goes to food, gas, Iris's school supplies. We shower at the gym, do laundry here. Iris does her homework in the library, and every single day I wake up knowing I failed her. You didn't fail me. Iris's voice was fierce. Mom, you didn't. I'm supposed to provide for you. Paulette was crying now, rain and tears indistinguishable. I'm supposed to give you a home. Vivienne reached into her bag, pulled out a folder. My husband was a social worker. He spent years documenting families like yours, people who were working, trying, doing everything right, but still couldn't get ahead because the system is designed to keep you trapped. She opened the folder, showed them Theodore's careful handwriting, his sketches and plans. He wanted to build something different. Not a shelter, not a charity. A comprehensive support system, housing assistance, job training, mental health services, educational support. He died before he could make it happen. I'm sorry, Paulette said quietly. I've been too afraid to build it. Too buried in grief. Vivienne looked between them. But I'm not afraid anymore. Let me help you, not with charity, with strategy. Let me use your story, anonymously, to help others. To force the school district to see how many students are invisible. To build what Theodore dreamed of building. Iris and Paulette looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations mothers and daughters can have without words. We'd have to trust you, Iris said finally. Yes. And other people would know, eventually. Eventually, but on your terms. Paulette wiped her face. What do you need from us? Vivienne pulled out Theodore's journals, the pages filled with his vision, his frustration, his hope. My husband spent years designing a system to help families like yours. I've been too afraid to build it, but I'm not afraid anymore. The empty classroom smelled of chalk dust and old radiator heat. Vivienne sat across from Iris at a scarred wooden desk, Theodore's journal open between them, a voice recorder positioned carefully to the side. Tell me about a typical morning, Vivienne said gently. Iris's fingers traced the duct tape on her shoe. 4:30. Mom's alarm on her phone. We keep it under the seat so no one walking by can hear it. Where are you parked? Behind the laundromat on 7th Street. There's a dumpster that hides the car from the street. Iris's voice was clinical, detached. Mom leaves for her shift at 5. I wait until 6 when the gas station on the corner opens. I buy $1 coffee so I can use their bathroom. They have soap that smells like fake flowers and disinfectant. Vivienne wrote steadily, her handwriting careful and precise. I wash my face, brush my teeth, change clothes in the stall. Tuesdays and Thursdays I wash my hair in the sink. The water's always cold. Iris paused. I walk to school. Takes about 45 minutes. I'm always the first one in the library. Ms. Patterson thinks I'm just really dedicated. What about food? Cafeteria breakfast. I take extra fruit, keep it in my backpack for later. Sometimes I take packets of crackers, peanut butter cups, things that won't spoil. Iris's voice cracked slightly. I know it's stealing. It's surviving, Vivienne said firmly. The recorder captured the silence that followed. 3 days later, Vivienne sat in a coffee shop with Paulette and a woman named Sandra Ortiz, a social worker Theodore had worked with years ago. Sandra had kind eyes and efficient hands that moved through paperwork with practiced ease. "You qualify for emergency assistance," Sandra said, spreading forms across the table. "It's not much, but it'll help with gas, food, and there's a certified nursing assistant program starting next month, 8 weeks, job placement assistance included." Paulette's hands trembled. "I applied to that program 2 years ago. They said I didn't qualify." "You do now. I made some calls." Sandra pushed a business card across the table. "This is my direct line. You call me if anyone gives you trouble." Vivienne watched Paulette's face transform, hope breaking through like sunlight through storm clouds. The changes came in increments. Coach Morrison, quietly informed, gave Iris access to the athletic facility showers before school. The school nurse, Mrs. Park, established a discreet hygiene supply closet. Iris could study in Vivienne's classroom until 6, charging her phone, eating snacks. Vivienne kept stocked without comment. "It's strange," Iris said one afternoon, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her chemistry textbook. "Feeling clean. Having food that I didn't have to hide. It makes everything else feel more possible." Vivienne looked up from her grading. "What feels possible?" "College, a real future." Iris's voice dropped. "Before, I couldn't let myself think about it. What's the point of dreaming when you're just trying to survive each day?" Late that night, Vivienne sat at her kitchen table, Theodore's photo watching from the bookshelf. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, tears blurring her vision as she typed. Subject is a 15-year-old female student, top 5% of her class, with perfect attendance despite living in her family's vehicle for 8 months. Subject wakes at 4:30 a.m. daily, walks 3 miles to school, and has developed elaborate strategies to hide her housing status from peers and staff. The student showers in gas station bathrooms, hoards cafeteria food, and completes homework in her car by flashlight. She typed through midnight, through 1 a.m., documenting every detail Iris had shared. The worn shoes, the carefully rotated outfits, the exhaustion hidden behind perfect test scores, the system's complete failure to notice. "This student sits in our classrooms every day. How many others are we missing?" The cursor blinked. Vivienne saved the document, then opened her email. Her hands shook as she filled out the school board meeting request form. Subject: Invisible Students, a case study in systemic failure. She attached the case study, Theodore's original nonprofit proposal, and preliminary research on student homelessness rates. Her finger hovered over send for a full minute before she clicked it. Principal Okafor passed Vivienne in the hallway the next morning, barely glancing up from his tablet. "Test scores look good this quarter, Ms. Khoury. Keep up the excellent work." He had no idea that his top-performing student slept in a car, that she was sitting in second period right now, clean for the first time in weeks, because a coach had quietly given her locker room access. Vivienne watched him disappear around the corner, oblivious. 2 weeks later, Paulette called Vivienne, her voice breaking with something that sounded like joy. "I got accepted. The CNA program, 8 weeks, then job placement. Sandra says the hospital is hiring." "Paulette, that's wonderful. It's not just a job, it's a career. It's a way out." Paulette was crying now. "Iris and we've been trapped for so long. This is the first time I can see a door opening." The night before the school board meeting, Vivienne and Iris sat in the empty classroom again. Rain drummed against the windows. The case study was printed, bound, ready. What if they don't care? Iris's voice was small. What if nothing changes? Vivienne reached across the desk, took Iris's hand. Then we'll make them care. Because you're not the only one. The fluorescent lights of the district meeting room hummed overhead, casting everything in that institutional pallor that made even healthy people look sick. Vivienne stood at the podium, her hands resting flat against the wood grain, feeling the worn smoothness beneath her palms. 300 faces looked back at her. Board members in their business casual, parents checking phones, teachers grading papers. Principal Okafor in the front row, his reading glasses perched on his head like always. She clicked to the first slide. No pictures, just text. 4:30 in the morning. That's when this student's day begins. Her voice was steady, clear, cutting through the ambient shuffle of a room that didn't yet know it should be listening. She wakes to an alarm on a phone kept at 15% battery because there's nowhere to charge it overnight. She's sleeping in the back seat of a sedan, her mother in the front, both of them using jackets as blankets because the real blankets got moldy last month from a leak in the trunk. The windows are fogged with their breath. It's November, it's cold. A board member in the third row stopped scrolling through his tablet. She walks 3 blocks to the 24-hour gas station, uses the bathroom, washes her face with pink industrial soap that smells like fake flowers and leaves her skin tight, brushes her teeth, changes her shirt in a stall barely wide enough to turn around. She's wearing the same jeans as yesterday because she only has 2 pairs. The same shoes, navy blue, size 7, held together with duct tape because the sole separated 2 months ago. Vivienne clicked to the next slide. Statistics. Numbers that should have shocked them years ago. She walks 3 miles to school, arrives at 6:45, an hour before first period because the library opens early and she can charge her phone. She can use the bathroom without anyone timing her. She can exist somewhere warm and clean and normal for a few hours. The room had gone quiet now. No more paper shuffling. No more phones. In first period, she's exhausted but focused. She can't afford to fail. Perfect grades are her only way out. She takes notes in a composition book she's used since September. Both sides of every page, margins filled. In the cafeteria, she takes extra napkins, extra packets of crackers. She wraps a banana in napkins and puts it in her backpack for dinner. She's learned which lunch ladies look away. A woman in the audience, maybe 40, pressed her hand to her mouth. After school, she stays late, helps teachers clean whiteboards, volunteers to shelve library books, anything to delay going back to the car, back to the laundromat parking lot where they park behind the dumpsters so no one notices, back to homework by phone flashlight because the dome light drains the battery too fast. Vivienne's hands were still steady, but her throat felt tight. This student has a 4.0 GPA. Perfect attendance. Teachers describe her as focused, intelligent, self-motivated. She's never asked for help, never complained, never given any indication that every single day is an act of survival. Principal Okafor had removed his glasses, was holding them in his hands, staring at them like he'd never seen them before. According to our research, Approximately 43 students in this district are experiencing homelessness. That's 43 children sleeping in cars, motels, shelters, or on friends' couches. 43 students who come to school hungry, exhausted, carrying trauma we never notice because they've learned to hide it. Because we've created a system where asking for help feels like admitting failure. She clicked to the final slide. Blank, except for one sentence. This student's name is Iris Brennan. She's a sophomore. She has a 4.0 GPA, and she's been living in a car for 7 months. The silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then the room found her. Iris stood up from her seat in the back row, her legs shaking but her spine straight. She wore jeans and a clean sweater borrowed from Vivienne's closet, and the navy sneakers with silver duct tape because those were hers and she'd chosen to wear them tonight. The gasps came first, then the eruption. Jesus Christ, that's impossible. She's in my daughter's. How did we not? Vivienne watched the recognition spread like a wave. Parents turning to look, students in the audience pointing, teachers with their hands over their mouths. Damaris Fletcher sat 4 rows back, her auburn hair catching the light, her face cycling through expressions too fast to name. Recognition first, then confusion, then something that looked like horror as she realized. 2 years of classes together. 2 years of walking past Iris in hallways, sitting near her in assemblies, seeing her every single day, and never once noticing, never once seeing. Tears ran down Damaris's face, black mascara streaking, and she didn't wipe them away. Principal Okafor hadn't moved. He sat frozen, his reading glasses still in his hands, staring at Iris like she was a ghost, like she was evidence of every failure he'd spent 30 years accumulating without realizing it. He'd passed her in hallways, praised her test scores, told Vivienne to keep up the excellent work. He'd never seen her at all. How many more? Vivienne's voice cut through the chaos, silencing the room again. How many more Irises are sitting in our classrooms right now, invisible, hungry, exhausted, terrified that someone will find out and judge them? How many more students are we failing while we congratulate ourselves on test scores? She gripped the podium edge. What are we going to do about it? The meeting devolved after that, board members arguing, parents demanding action, reporters from the local paper taking notes, people swarming toward Iris with questions, offers, apologies that meant nothing and everything. Iris lasted maybe 5 minutes before she bolted. Vivienne found her in the parking lot, rain soaking through that borrowed sweater, standing next to the sedan that had been her home. Iris's shoulders were shaking, her breath coming in gasps. Everyone knows now. Iris's voice broke on the words. Everyone knows I'm the homeless girl. That's all I'll ever be. The hallway felt different Monday morning. Iris knew objectively that Roosevelt High's fluorescent lights hadn't changed, that the same scuffed linoleum stretched between the same rows of lockers, that the same bell would ring at the same time. But everything felt exposed now, like someone had stripped away a protective layer she'd spent 2 years carefully constructing. Maya Cortez stopped mid-stride when she saw Iris, her physics textbook clutched against her chest. I'm so sorry. I had no idea you were going through that. Iris nodded, kept walking. 3 steps later, Brandon Wu caught up to her. "Hey, that was really brave what you did. Seriously." Another nod. Another escape. By third period, Iris had received 17 variations of the same conversation. Some kids looked at her with pity that made her skin crawl. Others treated her like she'd suddenly become inspirational, as if surviving homelessness was a personality trait instead of a circumstance. A few avoided her entirely, uncomfortable with the reality she represented. She found Vivienne's classroom during lunch, the one place that felt safe. Vivienne looked up from grading papers, took one look at Iris's face, and set down her red pen. "Everyone's treating me like I'm different," Iris said. She didn't sit down. "Like I'm fragile, or fascinating, or both." "You are different," Vivienne said quietly. "You're the girl who maintained a 4.0 while living in a car. You're the girl who walked 3 miles every morning and still showed up ready to learn. That's extraordinary." "I don't want to be extraordinary. I want to be normal." "You're not just the homeless girl, Iris. You're the girl who survived and still excelled. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. The only thing that changed is other people's awareness." Iris finally sat down, her worn backpack hitting the floor with a familiar thud. "Damaris Fletcher cried when she saw me this morning, like actual tears. We've had 3 classes together for 2 years, and she never once said hello until today. Guilt is uncomfortable. People respond to it in strange ways. I don't want her guilt. I don't want anyone's guilt." "Then tell her that," Vivienne said. "You have a voice now. Use it." The school board met again Thursday evening, but this session felt different. Less performance, more urgency. Iris watched from the same seat as Principal Okafor presented a comprehensive plan for identifying and supporting homeless students, confidential screening protocols, dedicated student liaisons, staff training on recognizing signs of housing insecurity, emergency funds for basic needs, transportation assistance. "We failed Iris Brennan," Okafor said, his voice carrying none of its usual administrative smoothness. "We failed her for 2 years while she sat in our classrooms, walked our hallways, and suffered invisibly. That ends now." He'd visited Vivienne's classroom that afternoon, his reading glasses in his hands like a shield. "I'm sorry," he'd said simply, "to both of you. I should have seen it. I should have created systems that made it impossible not to see it." Vivienne had accepted his apology with a nod. Iris had said nothing, but she'd seen something shift in Okafor's expression. Shame transformed into determination. Failure acknowledged and converted into fuel. Friday afternoon, Damaris Fletcher appeared in Vivienne's classroom doorway. Her auburn hair was pulled back, no makeup, none of her usual confidence. She looked young and uncertain. "Can I talk to you?" she asked Iris. They sat in the back corner. 2 girls who'd occupied the same spaces for years without ever really meeting. Damaris twisted her hands together, her manicured nails suddenly seeming absurd and excessive. "I'm sorry," Damaris said. "I'm so sorry I never noticed. I walked past you every day and I never saw you. I don't have an excuse. I was selfish and blind, and I hate that about myself." Iris studied her. "What do you want from me? Forgiveness? Permission to feel better?" "I want to help. Actually help. Not just feel better about myself. I don't know how, but I want to do something real." Then stop apologizing and start acting, Iris said. Use whatever privilege got you elected vice president. Make noise. Make people uncomfortable. Make them see. Damaris nodded, tears on her face, and something like understanding passed between them. That night, Vivienne finally opened Theodore's boxes. She'd kept them sealed in the spare bedroom for 2 years, unable to face the weight of his dreams without him. But Iris's face kept appearing in her mind. The way she'd looked in the parking lot, rain-soaked and breaking. The way she'd looked in the classroom, asking what came next. Theodore's handwriting covered page after page. Detailed plans for a comprehensive family support organization, not just emergency housing, but transitional programs, job training partnerships with local businesses, educational support for children, mental health services for parents dealing with trauma and shame, child care assistance, transportation programs, a model that addressed root causes instead of just symptoms. You saw this coming, Vivienne whispered to the empty room. You knew families like Iris's needed more than charity. They needed systems. She called a community meeting for the following Tuesday. 27 people showed up, including 3 school board members, 2 city council representatives, local business owners, and representatives from existing nonprofits. Vivienne presented Theodore's vision, her voice steady despite the grief that threatened to crack it open. My husband believed that poverty wasn't a personal failing, but a systemic issue requiring systemic solutions. He spent 15 years in social work, watching families fall through cracks that shouldn't exist. He designed this program to catch them. She showed them the plans, the budget projections, the partnership models, the measurable outcomes. I'm asking for your support, financial, logistical, whatever you can offer. We can build this. We can make Roosevelt the model for how communities support their most vulnerable families. Marcus Chen, owner of Chen's Hardware, stood up. He was 63, graying, with calloused hands and kind eyes. My family lived in our truck for 8 months when I was 12. This was 1968, before there were programs or awareness or any of this. We survived because one teacher noticed and quietly helped. I'm writing a check for $10,000 right now, and my business will match any donation under $500. Others followed. Commitments of money, space, volunteer hours, professional services. By the end of the meeting, they had $43,000 pledged and a steering committee of 11 people. Paulette completed her CNA training that month, passing her certification exam on the first try. She got a full-time position at Mercy General Hospital with benefits, night shift, but stable. Real paychecks, health insurance, the possibility of saving for a deposit on an actual apartment. The sedan sat in the hospital parking lot during Paulette's shifts now, no longer a home, but just a car. Temporary housing had given them a studio apartment, small but warm, with a door that locked and a shower that worked and beds that didn't fold away. 6 months passed in a blur of meetings and permits and fundraising and construction delays and small victories. The first transitional housing facility broke ground on a Tuesday morning in May. Vivienne stood in the muddy lot, holding a ceremonial shovel, surrounded by supporters and press and city officials. Iris stood beside her, her old navy sneakers, replaced by sturdy boots, her mother behind her with tears streaming down her face. This is just the beginning, Vivienne whispered to Iris as cameras flashed. Your story is going to help hundreds of families. Are you ready for that? Iris looked at the empty lot that would become something real and permanent and helpful. She thought about all the other kids sitting in classrooms right now, invisible and exhausted and afraid. She nodded. Yes, she said, I'm ready. The October morning they opened the first Vivienne Khoury Foundation transitional housing facility. The air smelled like fresh paint and possibility. 5 families stood in the parking lot of the converted apartment building, children clutching stuffed animals and parents clutching paperwork, all of them looking at the modest 3-story structure like it was a palace. Vivienne handed keys to a mother holding a toddler, watched tears stream down the woman's face, and understood that this moment, this simple transfer of metal into palm, represented everything Theodore had envisioned. Iris stood beside her, helping a little boy carry his backpack inside, and the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. The girl who'd lived in a car was now opening doors for others. 2 weeks later, Iris sat in her own bedroom for the first time in 18 months. The room was small, barely fitting a twin bed and a desk, but it had a door that closed and a window that looked out at actual trees instead of parking lot asphalt. Paulette stood in the doorway, still wearing her hospital scrubs from the night shift, watching her daughter arrange books on a shelf. You can leave clothes on the floor if you want, Paulette said, her voice thick. You can make a mess. It's yours. Iris placed her old navy sneakers, the ones with duct tape, on the top shelf, a reminder of where they'd been. Then she pulled out her homework and sat at her own desk, in her own room, and cried. The community fundraiser in January filled the high school auditorium beyond capacity. Iris walked to the microphone in a blue dress Damaris had helped her pick out, her hands steady, her voice clear. 3 years ago, I was sitting in this building every day, and nobody knew I was homeless, she began. I was invisible because I worked very hard to be invisible. Poverty makes you good at disappearing. She told them about the laundromat parking lot, the 4:30 a.m. alarms, the duct tape on her shoes. She told them about the teacher who noticed, who cared enough to act, who understood that one person's attention could change everything. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. They raised $68,000 that night. The foundation expanded like roots spreading underground. Job training programs launched in March. Interview skills, resume workshops, certification courses. The tutoring center opened in May, filled with students every afternoon, doing homework at clean tables with patient volunteers. Therapy sessions happened in quiet rooms where families could finally talk about the trauma of instability without shame. Legal assistance helped people navigate the bureaucratic nightmares that kept them trapped. By summer, they were serving 32 families. Damaris organized a youth-led fundraiser that surprised everyone, especially herself. She mobilized her entire social circle. The kids with money, the ones who'd never thought about homelessness because they'd never had to. They held a 5K run, a silent auction, a battle of the bands. Damaris stood on stage between sets and told them about Iris, about their shared classrooms, about her own blindness. I saw her every day and never really saw her, she said. We can't let that happen anymore. They raised $93,000. Damaris stopped wearing designer shoes to school. Principal Okafor implemented district-wide changes that became a model for the entire state. Every school got a homeless student liaison. trained to recognize the signs Vivienne had noticed. Confidential support systems launched, food pantries disguised as student resource centers, clothing closets that looked like lost and found areas, shower facilities in gym buildings with extended hours. Teachers received mandatory training on invisible poverty, learning that the quiet kid in the back row might be fighting battles no one could see. Other districts sent delegations to observe, to learn, to replicate. The model spread to neighboring counties, then across state lines. Iris graduated valedictorian on a warm June evening, wearing a white dress and new shoes, standing before her entire class. Her speech wasn't about achievement or success. It was about the kids still hiding, still struggling, still invisible. "Look around," she told the audience. "Someone in this room is hungry right now. Someone doesn't know where they're sleeping tonight. Someone is wearing shoes held together with hope and duct tape. See them. Please, see them." The applause was thunderous, but more important were the quiet conversations that happened afterward. Students finally admitting their struggles. Parents finally asking for help. The scholarship letter arrived in August. Full ride to State University, social work and education, double major. Iris held the paper in her hands and thought about Theodore Khoury, the man she'd never met, whose dreams had saved her life. By December, the foundation opened its 4th transitional housing facility. 47 families had found stability, jobs, hope. 3 years after the school board meeting, Iris returned to Roosevelt High, now a college sophomore. She walked through familiar hallways carrying something wrapped carefully in tissue paper. Her old Navy sneakers, duct tape still visible, preserved like artifacts. The ribbon fell away in 2 crimson pieces and the crowd erupted. The 5th facility stood gleaming behind them. 12 apartments that would house 12 families who currently slept in cars, motels, shelters, or worse. News cameras captured everything. Local politicians smiled for photographs. But Iris Brennan, 19 years old and standing at the podium in a gray blazer and black flats, held something that made the crowd fall silent. A pair of navy sneakers, silver duct tape still visible across the toes. These shoes walked 3 miles to school every morning for 8 months, Iris said, her voice steady and clear. They walked through rain that soaked through the tape. They walked past classmates who never looked down, never noticed, never asked why I wore the same pair every single day. These shoes carried me through calculus tests and English essays and lunch periods where I pretended I wasn't starving. They carried me home to a 1998 Honda Civic, parked behind a laundromat where my mother and I slept under donated blankets and pretended we were camping, not homeless. Cameras flashed. Someone in the back row wiped their eyes. 3 years ago, my teacher noticed these shoes. Mrs. Khoury didn't look away. She didn't pretend not to see. She noticed, and then she acted, and that changed everything. Iris set the shoes carefully on the podium. But here's what I learned. My story didn't end when I got help. It expanded, because once you've been invisible, once you've been seen, you start seeing others. She gestured off stage. "Novalie, come here, please." A small girl emerged, 13 years old, with dark hair and enormous eyes. She walked carefully, and everyone saw it at once. Her shoes, held together with clear packing tape wrapped around the soles. Iris knelt down, eye level with Novalee. "Tell them where you live." "Sunset Motel, room 247. Novalee's voice was barely audible. "With my mom and dad and my little brothers. We've been there 11 months. Iris produced a shoebox from beneath the podium, opened it slowly. New sneakers, purple with silver laces, exactly Novalee's size. She helped the girl remove the taped shoes, slide into the new ones. The crowd applauded, but Iris raised her hand. The shoes matter, but what matters more is what comes with them. Novalee starts tutoring tomorrow at the Foundation's Education Center. Her family meets with our housing specialist next week. Her mom has a job interview Friday at the hospital where my mother works. The shoes are a symbol, the support is everything. The screen behind them lit up with faces. Families standing in front of new apartments, kids graduating high school, parents in work uniforms smiling. 217 families helped so far. 463 children now sleeping in beds instead of back seats. Paulette Brennan took the microphone next, wearing scrubs from her CNA shift. "I thought asking for help meant I'd failed as a mother. I was wrong. Accepting help meant I loved my daughter enough to swallow my pride. Now I help other families do the same. I navigate the system that almost destroyed us. Shame kept us in that car. Community got us out." Damaris Fletcher spoke about privilege and blindness, about how easy it was to never look down, never notice worn shoes or hoarded cafeteria food. Iris sat 3 rows behind me for 2 years. I never saw her. Now I can't stop seeing. None of us should. Principal Okafor discussed policy changes spreading across 17 school districts. Homeless student liaisons in every building. Confidential support systems. Training for teachers to recognize invisible poverty. One student, one teacher, one choice to notice. That's where systemic change begins. Vivienne Khoury spoke last, holding a worn journal covered in her late husband's handwriting. Theodore dreamed of this. Families finding stability. Kids finding hope. A model that could expand infinitely. He didn't live to see it, but his vision did. 217 families helped. The number grows daily. It will never stop growing. After the ceremony, Iris and Novalee walked through the new building together, their footsteps echoing in empty hallways that would soon fill with laughter and homework and ordinary evening sounds. "What do you want to be?" Iris asked. "A teacher, maybe. Or a social worker. Someone who helps." Iris smiled, remembering herself at 13, believing her circumstances were permanent. "You will be amazing." In the Foundation's headquarters, the original Navy sneakers sat in a glass display case. The plaque beneath them read, "It starts when someone notices. It continues when someone acts. It never ends when someone teaches another to care." There's an Iris in your community, maybe in your school, maybe in your workplace, maybe in your family. Will you notice? And when you notice, will you act?